The so-called sword and sandal genre goes all the way back to the earliest days of film, with silent movies like the original Ben-Hur and The Thief of Baghdad offering big-budget spectacle with historical fantasy. When Hollywood started to feel the pressure from television in the early 1950s, the studios turned to such epics to offer something unavailable on the small screen. But the vast majority of these films, movies like The Robe and, of course, Cleopatra, were financial disasters. However, there was one man working on the outskirts of the industry who wanted nothing more than to bring epic fantasy to life, and he knew how to do it without breaking any banks. That man was Ray Harryhausen.
From the world past hope and fear, I bid you, genie, now appear.
The heroic Sinbad has just returned from a journey to the treacherous island of Colossa, having barely survived an attack by a one-eyed giant. He brings with him to Baghdad a magician named Sakura, who wants nothing more than to return to Colossa to retrieve a magical lamp and the genie trapped within. With Sinbad and the Caliph refusing to condone such a mission, Sakura secretly uses his magic to shrink Sinbad's love, the Princess Parisa, and then convinces Sinbad that the only cure for her supernatural ailment can be found on Colossa. Sinbad finally agrees to a new voyage to the island, but can he survive the horrors of Colossa long enough to cure the princess? Or will the evil magician be his downfall?
Shortly after working on Mighty Joe Young, Ray Harryhausen got the idea to make a movie about the Arabian merchant Sinbad the Sailor, a literary hero from 1001 Arabian Nights who went on 7 legendary adventures involving mysterious islands, fantastic creatures, and perilous danger. Sinbad had been the subject of films both animated and live action for years, but in Harryhausen's eyes, those movies were disappointing because they rarely, if ever, showed the mythological beasts, choosing to imply rather than show. Therefore, Harryhausen made 8 large drawings featuring various creatures and action with Sinbad, along with a 3 to 4 page outline of a plot that borrowed from the Sinbad tales. Unfortunately, he couldn't get any studios interested in the project, especially after the 1955 box office flop of Son of Sinbad, itself a troubled production mired in controversy. According to Harryhausen, the studios all but unanimously agreed that, quote, costume pictures were dead, unquote. A few years later, though, after making 3 successful science fiction films together, Harryhausen was able to get producer Charles Schneer to pitch his Sinbad idea to Columbia Pictures. With Columbia's tentative support, they then brought in Kenneth Kobe to turn Harryhausen's sketches and outline into a proper screenplay, which he did in concert with both Harryhausen and Schneer. Finally, with a first draft of the script completed, they went looking for a director. On the set of his previous film, 20 Million Miles to Earth, Harryhausen had developed a good working relationship with Nathan Juran, due in large part to Juran's willingness to let him essentially direct half the picture. Thus, in mid-August 1957, and with a budget of roughly $650,000, cameras began rolling on the 7th voyage of Sinbad. To play the lead role of Sinbad, they cast Columbia's rising star Kerwin Matthews, who had just finished Tarawa Beachhead, another Charles Schneer production, and had long been attached to star in the cancelled Rita Hayworth picture Joseph and His Brothers. Kerwin trained extensively with an Italian Olympian fencing master whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce, and the two of them did a lot of work with Harryhausen to choreograph the climactic sword fight between Sinbad and the skeleton. While about as Arabic as I am, Matthews is easily the best Sinbad to ever appear in an American film. For the female lead of Princess Parisa, they cast Catherine Crosby, working under the pseudonym Catherine Grant, while the villain, Sakura, is played by the prolific India-born British character actor Torrin Thatcher. whose mix of cartoonish villainy and silver-tongued cunning make for the best performance in the whole film. Thatcher wore a bald cap through much of principal photography, but he eventually got sick of having it applied every morning and opted to shave his head for real. Meanwhile, the English actors Alec Mango and Harold Casket play the Caliph of Baghdad and the Sultan, respectively, while Alfred Brown plays the ill-fated Harufa. The genie is played by American child actor Richard Eyre, fresh off of his role in The Invisible Boy. Eyre wasn't cast until near the end of filming. He didn't get to visit Spain, so in many scenes you actually see a stand-in with his back turned to the camera. Though Schneer and Harryhausen initially intended to film in the Middle East, where the story is set, the ubiquitous political turmoil in the region forced them to reconsider. As a substitute, they chose Spain, where there was plenty of similar-looking architecture and lots of scenic beaches and islands to choose from. The Baghdad scenes were all filmed at Alhambra Palace in Granada, where they were only allowed to film inside at night, while the Cyclops Valley was filmed in Majorca, where they also utilized the Arta Caves for the underground sequences.
Good luck.
Most of the beach scenes were done in Costa Brava, near Sagaro and San Feliu. The ship scenes were done in Barcelona Harbor, because the one time they actually tried to take the ship out to sea, it nearly capsized. However, with clever use of gimbals and stock footage, they were able to fake it. For the storm sequence, the Barcelona Fire Department sprayed water from the harbor and tossed buckets of it at the actors, sometimes containing rats and other debris. Many cast members, particularly the non-Spanish ones, got sick. Kerwin Matthews, though, was already suffering from a severe fever when it came time to shoot the sequence, but he powered through it and would later go on to remark how proud he was that he did it. One place they were able to save money was on the costumes, because they used leftovers from the unfinished Rita Hayworth production, Joseph and His Brothers. Some set work was done at studios in Seville, but most of the non-location shooting was done in London and Los Angeles, including the many traveling matte shots and the entire sequence inside the genie's lamp. After most of that was done, Harryhausen then retired to his storefront studio for 11 months of stop-motion animation work, 3 of which were dedicated just to the skeleton fight. His biggest concern going into it all was, since this was the first full-length film to have stop-motion in color, he was unable to develop any film himself. The resulting time crunch did force him to abandon plans to include the sirens, who were heard but not seen in the final film, but once he got into a rhythm, he was surprised by how much he was able to get done. Luckily, he had the foresight, prior to even starting his work, to ensure that the background plates were filmed with additional lighting or overexposed film, due to the fact that the rear projector he used for his trademark dynamation process had a tendency to mute color images. For the Cyclops, he recycled some of his unused ideas for the Emir in 20 Million Miles to Earth, and even cannibalized the Emir armature to create the two-horned monster. He also used parts of his Beast from 20,000 Fathoms to build the dragon, inside of which he placed a carefully regulated bladder to simulate breathing. One way he was able to speed up the process was by using molded foam rubber, a relatively new technology at the time. Finally, when most of the film was complete, Harryhausen wanted to get King Kong's Max Steiner to provide the score. But Charles Schneer had somebody else in mind. Schneer had met the great Bernard Herrmann a few years earlier and remembered that the composer had expressed interest in doing fantasy. Herrmann therefore enthusiastically agreed to work on Sinbad, and the resulting music is considered some of the best music in cinema history, full stop. As usual, I wish I could play some of it for you, but YouTube's gonna YouTube. The 7th Voyage of Sinbad was given a holiday release on December 17, 1958, to glowing reviews that praised the effects, music, and acting. It did really well with audiences too, with a lot of them, particularly children, seeing it more than once, extending its profitable run well past the Christmas season. In total, it grossed $6 million in theater rentals worldwide, making it one of Columbia's biggest hits that year. In its wake, Harryhausen became more famous than ever before, and Hollywood continued to try to make more sword and sandal pictures, failing to understand that the magic didn't come from big-name stars or expensive sets. Kerwin Matthews so enjoyed working with Harryhausen and Schneer that he would star in their next film, The Three Worlds of Gulliver, though by the time Harryhausen finally returned to Sinbad in the 70s, Matthews had quit acting and needed to be replaced. Regardless, the 7th Voyage of Sinbad is widely considered one of Harryhausen's best films, in addition to being one of the best straight-up fantasy films of all time. I may not have been around at the height of its popularity in the 50s and 60s, but I know how seminal the picture was for children and even adults when it came out. Nothing like it had ever graced the silver screen before, and few movies have come since that can claim to have captured its spirit. And looking at it objectively, divorced from its legacy, I can still say that The 7th Voyage of Sinbad is a great film. Harryhausen has really hit his stride by this point, and the tone of the film is a perfect embodiment of family-friendly escapism. I know quote-unquote modern audiences might get hung up on the ethnicity of the actors or the liberties the story takes with the original tales of Sinbad the Sailor, but those kinds of complaints, while valid, miss the point. This is a movie that can, if you let it, make you feel like an adolescent kid reading old-fashioned stories of swashbuckling heroes, unambiguously evil villains, and magical creatures. It's pure imagination on screen, showing you things you never thought you could see with your own eyes. I know the special effects don't look particularly realistic in the current standard, but when it comes to the stop-motion works of Willis O'Brien, Phil Tippett, and Ray Harryhausen, it's not about realism so much as it is about artistry. Honestly, I'd take 1950s style stop-motion animation over modern computer-generated eye candy every day of the week. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. Which creature from The 7th Voyage of Sinbad is your favorite? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and until next time, when things will get both bigger and smaller, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
Escape from this cave?
I shall try, O princess. I shall try.